Welcome, everybody, into Pac 12 football and beyond. I am your humble host, Chris Landry, veteran NFL scout, coach college and NFL level, and excited to be talking college football with you again as I'm checking my email here for some information I'm waiting on. But anyway, we have got a lot to get to today. I say that all the time, but it's always true. So I guess it's okay if I do that. I hope anyway. Just excited to have you with us. Want to invite you. The reason why we do this show live on Twitch TV, twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football, is to get you involved in the show. Come in, join us in the chat room. Bring your questions, bring your thoughts. It doesn't have to be about the Pac-12. Could be about anything in football. I do a show for all 5 conferences. I do the show for all 5 conferences because I want to get into the detail of each and every program, each and every game as best I can. And it's hard. It's impossible to do it. I do a national show, Scouts Eye on College Football. But I can't really get to every team all the time. And you hit on the high points. And then you get into the minutia of breaking down each team in each conference with the conference show. So that's what we're doing over in the conference shows, and that's why we have the Pac-12 show. Yeah, I get it. Pac-12, Big 12, maybe even the ACC, not very good in some people's eyes, and maybe the fan base is not as big. But this is for folks that are interested in all the leagues, that are interested in what is going on. So help us try to find those folks that might be interested in this. And again, we allow you the leeway to come with any questions or thoughts that you might have on things that you want to discuss. So please do that as well. A reminder that you can get this show live on Twitch TV. How do you do that? Go to LandryFootball.com, click on follow Chris on Twitch, or just go to twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football, and that'll get you there to our channel. On the podcast forum, we invite you to sign up for Pac-12 football and beyond. That's right, Pac-12 football and beyond. Sign up for Big Ten football and beyond. Sign up for Big 12 football and beyond. That'll get you all the latest information as we get these shows to you. We also have, obviously, LandryFootball.com that is going to provide you with all the detailed film room analysis, the previews of each and every game, the reviews of each and every game. And as we sit here on Wednesday and kind of wrap up and look ahead both into the conference as well as all the big matchups nationally, we remind you that LandryFootball.com is the only place you can go to get film room analysis and breakdowns of all the games. What happened, why it happened inside the film room, we've got that for you. What is coming up this week in the previews, what the film tells us about the matchups, we got that for you. So LandryFootball.com, take advantage of that football season sale that we have there. So we're going to take a look at each of the games as we do from this Pac-12 weekend. We're going to talk about the storylines. We're going to talk about some of the issues going on around the league, maybe hand out some game balls. But again, more importantly, answer your questions. If you don't have any questions, it's fine. No big deal. We'll get out of here a little bit earlier and we'll go from there. But some notes around the Pac-12. Jackson Dart was in the uniform on Tuesday practicing. It's the first time since the game against Washington State when he left with that meniscus injury. He played pretty well in that game. Washington State is not very good. What does it really mean? Well, nothing. Keaton Slovis is the starter, but he's in a backup role, and the bad luck they've had with injuries at quarterback, you would think that having two ready is paramount there. Over at Washington, tough season for them. Tough loss to Washington State last week. The sophomore running back, Richard Newton, is expected to be close to 100% in their next game. They've got a bye. on October 16th. Well, they got a bye this week, and their next game is against UCLA October 16th. And the big game, by the way, we do have one game from the Pac-12 that's going to make our prime breakdown list. Remember, we break down every game within each conference. Have that everybody broken down. But we'll have a special 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on the elite games of the week. We'll have some special, more elaborate breakdowns, and one of them is Stanford, Arizona State this week. And Stanford's senior wide receiver, Bryson Tremaine, with the knee, will not play this week against Arizona State. That game is on Friday night, so that's your late Friday night. So if you got date night with the wife or the significant other, get home and watch it. That's 9:30 Central Time, 10:30 for those of you out on the East Coast. That'll be a good one, as they say. And then you can get up early as the going to have sometimes we have the best game matchups that are going head-to-head. It's not really the case here. That's a really good one. Oklahoma, Texas is 11 a.m. Central on Saturday. And then at 3 o'clock Central, Penn State, Iowa, a really good one. Some other matchups that are intriguing. We'll see. Maryland's banged up at receiver a little bit right now. They've got some playmakers. How does Ohio State handle it? It's going to be interesting. Michigan State, Rutgers, a little bit of a challenge. How much of a challenge against Michigan State is going to be fun to watch. West Virginia, Baylor. Arkansas, Ole Miss at 11 a.m. is also very interesting, as who is likely the second best team in the West? Will at least have enough of an indicator at this point who would be the second best. Then we get into the second window. We've got Boise State, BYU. You've got Georgia, Auburn. Not a whole lot there. It's basically Penn State, Iowa, and that is the featured game in that time slot, and nobody's really close. That's on Fox. And then the evening matchup, primetime CBS game, the Alabama A&M game in College Station. Don't foresee that being a good one. The better matchup may be, can Nebraska challenge Michigan? How much? Going to be interesting to watch that. LSU, Kentucky. Is Kentucky going to have a letdown? LSU, always the potential to rise up and play well with the talent that they have, but in a must-win situation where they'd always run. Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Utah, USC. So that's kind of the breakdown. UCLA, Arizona is 9:30 Eastern Time. I didn't mean to get into the breakdowns, but or the schedule this early, but since I was on it. A Colorado redshirt freshman Devontae Chenault is eligible for a return from his suspension. And Bennett Williams, who had the injury in practice for Oregon prior to the Stanford game, is going to undergo surgery with a broken fibula. So best wishes to him there. All the latest news and notes inside our College Football Notebooks daily. Recruiting information, obviously what's going on at practices right now, meetings and roster changes and depth chart changes. We got it all for you over at LandryFootball.com. So the week that was inside the Pac-12. I would say, and I'm not going to address this game first. We're going to go through all of them. But I thought it was a really good performance, and at least I would say a statement performance by Arizona State against UCLA. We don't know how good the South is going to be. We don't know how good overall the Pac-12 will be, but that was a good statement. The biggest statement, however, in the conference clearly was made by Oregon. They have not fared well against Stanford. They have lost to them repeatedly while ranked. They don't match up well with them. They haven't matched up well with them. And here's what I've said about Oregon. A good football team. No doubt a good football team. But they lack dynamics in the passing game to be that playoff caliber team. Somebody that, well, maybe you could get in, but can you do anything once you get in type of team? That's not Oregon. And there's not anybody in the Pac-12. I said this on ACC Football and Beyond on yesterday. I think the Pac-12 is, along with the ACC, is for all intents and purposes out of the playoff scenario. Now, look, some people take things wrong when I say that. Look, it's Georgia and it's Alabama. It's Alabama and Georgia's world, and there's a huge gap. But there are some interesting storylines in college football. Who can make the playoffs? Maybe it's who's going to earn the right to get a butt whipping over those two, but you never know what might happen. That's kind of how I see it. That's the way it looks. But at this stage, as we're going into week 6, October 9th, to virtually be eliminated, which the Pac-12 and the ACC is, boy, it's an ominous look. You'd like to think you could take it into November, and Oregon could not do it. It's tough, and you wonder a little bit as I delve into the end of beyond portion of this. Texas, I'm not predicting, and that's one of the game breakdowns. Penn State, Iowa, Oklahoma, Texas, and Stanford, Arizona State's the 3 focal games that I'm going to preview in great detail. But again, all the games will be broken down. I would say that Texas has a better shot than probably anybody thought against Oklahoma. Should that take place, does that knock out the Big 12? We're getting ready to where as everybody gets knocked down, does that put everybody back in? I mean, at this point, we don't have enough teams. We don't have 2 teams that can make it. We don't have 2 teams that can fit into the playoffs. We got 2 teams that are elite, and we're trying to find who are the other 2. I mean, I think that's the story. The story is, the shocking story would be if something happens to one of those 2, and things can happen. But considering the unlikelihood that would be the case, who are the 2? Oh, there's no clear 2, meaning there's no clear 3 and 4, is what I'm trying to say. Where do you go if you start eliminating? I've already eliminated the ACC, and I don't think they're very good. I do think you can make a case of Oregon being a good team. I can't make one for Wake Forest or NC State, and I can't make it for Clemson this year. I can make a case that there will be a good Big Ten team that you can put in there. There's always that, well, we can look at Cincinnati type, that could be a filler, an option to turn to. I don't know that I would sit there and say that Cincinnati is definitively better than Oregon, but I will say that they probably are a little bit because of the quarterback situations and the matchup there. But it does bring out a point, as I've gone this early and said, whoa, ACC Pac-12 are out. What if Oklahoma goes down? Then it throws the Big 12 in a tailspin. Oklahoma would then have a loss. Who knows? Maybe another one along the way, and a Texas with a beatdown against Arkansas. Where do you go? There is not a third SEC team. Florida's not it. A&M's not it. Kentucky's not it. Arkansas's not. There is not a third team. There is not a third team from the SEC. Not that a third one would get in, but there is not even someone that's even into the discussion. So it would get interesting if the Big 12 shoots itself in the foot, and then it leaves you just the Big 10. Well, I think the Big Ten, you still got USC. That's a good team. I think you got an Iowa team that if they get by Penn State, look, it's not like I rubber stamp Iowa to win the rest of their games. But if you look at their schedule, they beat Penn State this week. They got a great chance to go unbeaten into the conference championship game. Now, I still, at this point, think that it might be a challenge to beat Ohio State, but we clearly know that's not a Herculean task of past years. So I still think there's a team there, and maybe you could have two from the Midwest. Maybe you can have an Ohio State or an Iowa and a Cincinnati. That might be your chances, but it's still early. I guess the point is we can't assume that all things will go smooth for those teams. And then what do you say about Ohio State and Oregon if Oregon wins out the rest of the way? Let's say Oregon wins the Pac 12 title. I'm not saying that they're not going to. That they're not going to lose another game. I think that they absolutely could. But what if they run the table? They beat Ohio State on the road. I still think that's fair game. And it's still hard to put a one-loss Big Ten champion Ohio State in over a one-loss Oregon Pac-12 champion when Oregon beat them in Columbus. Tough sell there. I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of football left. And as I look at, the film tells me, boy, I don't think this team's a playoff team. I don't think that team's a playoff team. I don't think that team's a playoff team. I don't think this are playoff teams. At some point, got to put two more in there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And still time to really develop the rest of your season. We'll see how it goes. I want to get to the breakdowns. I want to answer a couple of questions in the chat room. And again, invite you to join us in the chat room. Twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. Spartan Barton says, do you think LSU stacks up nice against Kentucky this week? Kentucky has a weak secondary, and all of LSU. I do not think LSU matches up well against Kentucky. I don't think. I think Kentucky's defense is going to be a problem for LSU. But let me just say this: LSU's got some talent. They're capable. I don't think Kentucky's offense is that good. And so I think where LSU's chances, it lies in Kentucky having a hangover after beating Florida, and the offense turning the football over. That's LSU's chances. Those two things happen, LSU could win it. And backs against the wall, and, I could see LSU winning this game. But I see it more in terms of that Kentucky's not as good as people think. I think, as I said, somebody asked, maybe it was you, Spartan, that asked, is Kentucky a playoff candidate? No, they're not even. I don't like them against Iowa. There are plenty of teams that are better. No, they're not that good. Like Auburn upsetting Georgia this weekend. Well, that has no chance of happening. That's just not even in the realm of discussion, in my view. Things, but to your point, things that we never expect happening at times do happen. But that wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. But because I don't think Auburn's that good, mainly. Spartan Martin, the Big Ten champ will likely get in. Do you think UCF or Boise have a chance against Cincinnati? I think they have a chance, but I don't think it's a very good chance. I think Cincinnati's quite a bit better. But the pressure mounting on Cincinnati, knowing that every game the pressure's got to play well, knowing every game got to be unbeaten, knowing every game you've got the playoffs at stake. That's what they're facing. But they're quite a bit better. Well, quite a bit better, I would say, is accurate against Boise and UCF, in my view. Rich Coach says, what does this mean of Oklahoma if they win the rest of their games? I'm not quite sure what you're asking, Rich. If you could, I don't know what you mean. What does this mean if they win the rest of the games? If Oklahoma wins the rest of their games and they're unbeaten, well, they're going to be in the playoffs. They haven't lost a game. And I think they're actually a pretty good team. people are down on them because they're not scoring the alarming amount of points. But we're going to learn a little bit more about them this week against Texas. I think this game is going to be a bigger challenge than you might think. And I think we're going to learn a little bit about how their defense responds in games like this. I think Oklahoma is still in position to run the table. I'm not saying that they're not. I think they're going to get challenged. It's not going to be easy. They could lose a game. They could lose two. But, I think it's more likely that they go unbeaten or maybe lose one. So we shall see. I think, look, it's like anything else. It's unlike, like if I'm looking at Georgia's schedule the rest of the way, your goal is to play well so that you can maintain your edge, you can get better and peak towards the end of the year. But if Georgia doesn't play well, it ain't going to matter. If they don't play well this week, it won't matter. They'll still beat Auburn, and they'll still beat them decisively, just not as decisively if they would if they play well. If Oklahoma doesn't play well, there's some teams that can get them. So I'm not, maybe if Rich, if you would let me know what you're asking, what does this mean if Oklahoma, if they win? They win the rest of the games, they're going to make the playoffs. My discussion is if they lose to Texas and then they win the rest of their games, then they're a one-loss team. They're not out of it, but, I think it might put them, they put them in the same boat that I would put Oregon in. Same boat that I'd put Ohio State in. We keep forgetting Ohio State's unbeaten in the Big 12. In the Big 10. But going back and forth here is confusing. Okay, good. I'm glad I answered. If Ohio State runs the table, they're unbeaten. They haven't lost. They're undefeated in the Big 10, but they've lost a game. Iowa's unbeaten overall. So, look, I think the difference could be if Ohio State is unbeaten and they beat a really good, particularly if it was an unbeaten Iowa team, they would have a really good case to get in. But over Oregon, think about that for a second. Now, a one-loss Oregon, and they lose to Stanford, but Oregon beat Ohio State. That to me is interesting to see. So there's a lot of football left to play. Those are fun scenarios. I know you want to get to them. The bottom line is there's a lot of football left, and a lot of these things usually take care of themselves. Let's get into some of the minutiae of the game. USC, speaking of USC, coaching search, still on. I mean, it's going to be on. Nothing's going to change. It's going to be a evaluation process. Mike Bohn will work its process, and they'll obviously we'll see towards the end of the season. This is about kind of, not just playing it out just to play it out, but you like to see players play hard and still compete. They really were impressive against Colorado. They blew past Colorado in what was a frustrating game for Carl Durrell, and had a off-the-field incident and pushed the cameraman. It's off to a worse start. And remember, it just gives you an idea too. When you, and again, I'm not trying to be rude, but this whole scenario of this guy's a great fit, that's a great hire, look at what the job he's done, and then you turn around. Carl Durrell, for example, great job last year. He was a late hire, had no time with his team due to COVID, and look how well they did. In those circumstances. All they really did, they had a good year, and it was good. But look, now it's completely the opposite. It's why I'm making the point I'm making, that so you can look at the bad, as our friend Rock has been talking about Jimbo Fisher, and it's the fourth year, and he should be, and all. It's not anything that he's saying that's incorrect, but it shows you that there's very few teams that just roll out every year, and it's just no drop off. Georgia seems to be at that level. Clemson has been at that level. Ohio State has been at that level. Oklahoma, to a large degree, has been at that level. And, of course, the gold standard is Alabama. But everybody, there's degrees of good. Very good. A&M, senior-laden last year, really good. I think they were underrated last year going into the year. Really good team. They maximized senior leadership. They handled all the adversity of the last year's season better than most. A lot of it's due to the senior leadership and had some breaks injury-wise and all that. This year, younger team. Everything, you didn't have COVID as much to do with this year. Neither did anyone else. So the team's not as good. Now, does it mean that you let them off the hook or what? No. I'm just saying that don't assume that as you get into that fourth year, fifth year, that automatically is going to be a better year than the year before. It's not always. And A&M is not to the point where Georgia is that it's going to be great. I think it's great when you can put a good year together and you have a second good year. Then the third, then it's all about consistency, right? Anything that you do. Anybody can have a good day, a good sales day, a good day on the golf course. It's consistency. Let's see it, put it, back to back. Colorado's really struggling. I thought USC ran the football extremely well against them. I thought Parker Lewis really had a good game. It was a good pass rush against a bad Colorado offensive line. And again, it's the same Colorado team that played A&M. It was, although you never stay the same. This is a team that doesn't have any offense, and the offensive line's a big problem, and A&M took advantage of it. Drake London is, folks, among the individual great performers this year. I would submit to you there are several, but I would say none have been better than Aiden Hutchinson of Michigan and Drake London of USC. They have been unbelievable. Been impressed with the freshman tight end Michael Trigg. Start to see some of the backups. Joshua Jackson had his first start. Isaac Taylor Stewart is on the men with the legs. Thought they had just 5 flags against Washington State, but boy, they are making some mistakes penalty-wise. Taj Washington is a guy they're working deep in the passing game. So I want to see a little bit more consistency out of Vave Malapia at running back. It's an impressive performance. Obviously, USC trying to figure things out. The question is, Spartan Martinez, when do you expect USA to make a decision? Well, obviously, Spartan Martin, they're not going to make a decision during the season. It's going to be depending on who they can get and the timing of who they ultimately go after. I would say mid-December, potentially earlier December, probably mid-December, late December. You'd like to get it done by the first signing day in mid-December, but can you do that? Can you zero in on your guy and get the deal done? It's not going to be done prior to that. It could get done early December, but depends on who it is. Who is it going to be? It's the timeline you need to look at is look at that last regular season weekend before the conference championship games. That is usually the weekend that most of the people's seasons are over. So between that weekend and the following weekend, which are the conference championship weekends, those 2 weekends are kind of the demarcation. Is your candidate in that championship game or not? It's usually that time where they kind of wrap it up. So the week following one of those 2 weeks is probably the best time frame if you can wrap it up with the guy you want. If not, it may take a little longer. But it's not like they're going to announce something, in October that, Luke Fickell's coming to USC. And, oh, by the way, he's going to finish out the year at Cincinnati or whatever. It's not going to work that way. Now you will see firings during the year, no question, but you don't see hirings during the year other than interims. For Colorado, it just wasn't a really good game at all. I thought Brady Russell played pretty well. Mustafa Johnson on the defensive line graded out well. Nate Landman continues to play pretty well at linebacker. Guy Thomas also. Quinn Perry. I thought the linebackers did the better of the job. Better defensive effort. Chase Perry did some good things, but just not a lot of talent here. And we're starting to see, again, in a normal year where everybody else can kind of get their act together, they're not having a whole lot of success. Spartan Mark, what coaches you expect to lose their jobs outside of the SEC? Let's get to that at the end of the show when I have a little more time. And a couple of the others. Anyway, we'll see. Stanford, the big upset over Oregon. The Ducks had this game won, and they couldn't put it away. Stanford took an early 10-0 lead, and they really capitalized on short fields, mainly due to the Anthony Brown interception and to score in the first touchdown of the day. That's part of the problem. Oregon can run it pretty well. Offensive line's pretty solid. Defensively, they play pretty good. They don't have enough at the quarterback position, and obviously they don't think Ty Thompson is ready. And Anthony Brown's a good young man. He did transfer from BC, did some good things, but they're having a hard time pushing the ball down the field, and they're becoming easier to defend. So Oregon got a stop late in the second and had a chance to get the final possession of the first half and the first possession of the second half, which are always pretty big. Instead, Oregon turned it over on downs at the end of the first half, went 3-and-out to start the second half. After the ensuing punt, the Oregon defense was downright dominant, forcing Stanford to punt on each of his first 4 drives of the second half. Then Oregon put together 3 scoring drives, 2 touchdowns. They took a 24-17 lead, and while that is not an insurmountable score, it looked like they were in control of the game. On the final drive of regulation, the Cardinals looked like they lost the game. They're sitting in the shadow of their own end zone. Less than 2 minutes left due to back-to-back false start penalties. It's over. It's just falling apart. Stanford moves the ball quickly down the field, the help of multiple 15-yard penalties with Oregon. All of a sudden, there's life. You breathe life into them. They're dead. They're done. It's over. You're getting ready to put the white sheet on top. You pump life into the lungs. Now you get they had a, who was it? Michael Wright knocked a pass away in the end zone. He was called for defensive holding. Then Cardinal get an untown down, and you know the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. So it was, I thought Tanner McGee played pretty well. I thought the receivers, Higgins and John Humphreys and Bryson Tremaine each had played pretty good games. Look, they're mentally tough. They play hard. They play well. They play physical. And it kind of has an effect against his Oregon team. It always has through different regimes, even through Chip's regime. So Nathaniel Pete, Tremaine were really good. So good performance by Stanford. A tough loss to Oregon. I mean, it doesn't. I still say it helps the Pac-12 to have the Oregon win over Ohio State on the road. It still looks good, and it shows, hey, look, you lost to Stanford, but you beat Ohio State. Even though teams change, never say the same, it does have a little bit of an effect. For Oregon overall, it was a very blasé effort. I thought the offense, the passing attack's just not good enough. They had a 66-yard catch and run to Micah Pittman. It just doesn't. I don't see enough there. The quarterback plays, holding them back, just not a really good performance. I thought the backs ran hard. I thought Travis Dye ran really hard. CJ Verdell wasn't quite as effective. Pass catchers were pretty average. The offensive line wasn't bad at all. They did give up a couple of sacks, but overall did a pretty good job defensively. I thought they were solid up front and at linebacker and in the secondary. I thought they played well enough defensively. They made some mistakes, but to me, this was on the inability to. Now, the mistakes late in the aforementioned Stanford being down on their own end, that killed them. You got to get off the field there. But offensively, just chances to put it away, couldn't get it done. Very surprising that Washington State surprised Cal in Berkeley. Jaden DeLaura made his return at quarterback. He helped the Cougar offense, 2 touchdown drives in the first quarter. Calvin Jackson played pretty well. The defense shut down Cal, did a really good job. Thought the offensive line had their best game of the year for Wazoo. The defense played with a lot of energy. Held to just 6 points and 273 yards. And it's a Cal offense that's not great on defense, but not great on offense by any stretch, but still a really good performance. So disappointing for Cal. This is another one of those cases of a program that's built on fundamentals, particularly in the defensive side, physicality, playing clean, playing good on special teams. They've been anything but. They've been poor fundamentally. They've been a lot of breakdowns. They've been very inconsistent on special teams. The offense has struggled. The offensive line in particular struggled more than they have all year long in this game. Really had a rough day. Cal had 12 total drives on the afternoon, scoring on one of the first thanks to a 44-yard shot play to Keiko Crawford. Then a touchdown run by Chris Brooks. And not much else. Washington State went 3 and out, didn't do a whole lot, but it was the inability of Cal to sustain anything and Washington State having more and more opportunities, and they were able to get it done. So credit to them. Good win for them. It's just not the clean type of football, the little things that you normally see them come on the positive side, they're not getting done. And we've seen a few teams like that. We see Northwestern that normally does things very well, having a really tough go of it. They're doing a really good job. They've normally done a good job at Cal doing that, but not doing the good things. 3 for 15 on third down and average like 8.3 yards to go. So, I mean, it wasn't the third down issue. It was the first down issue that led to the third and long issues, which are going to be low percentages. So it's the lack of the little things for Cal that's killing them. I tell you who's doing a really good job and who's been the storyline and the certainly coach of the year thus far in the league is Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. They move. It's just for now. We'll see. That's not going to last. But Oregon State has moved into first place. I tweeted it out prior to the game. They get this done against Washington. They're number 1. Yes, your Oregon State Beavers are ranked first place in the FC North standings. They hit a winning field goal late to beat Washington 27-24. Great game for them. Chance Nolan has really played well at quarterback. Really impressive. They had Sam Neuer. This guy's just kind of nose to the grindstone. Look, they're not. They protect the football. They show leadership. Nolan only threw it like 15 times for 48 yards and had an interception. But they run the football well. Boy, they run it really well. And they are physical. They play normally mistake-free. That B.J. Baylor's running it well. He had 111 yards, 2 touchdowns, clutch, tough. So they're playing with a lot of confidence right now. lot of confidence. Thought the offensive line graded well. I thought Jack Coletto ran well. Thought Alton Julian did a nice job. Thought Jaden Grant did a good job defensively. Deshaun Fenwick's running it well when they get the ball to him. Rayshawn Wright's playing well on the defensive side. Everett Hayes was very good. He was 2 for 3. Obviously, clutch getting it done. I mentioned B.J. Baylor, and Avery Roberts is playing well on the defensive side. For Washington, Dylan Morris looked in control to start the game at quarterback, 4 for 4, like 70 yards in the first drive. Things were going smooth the rest of the game. I thought Oregon State made some really good adjustments. They really brought a lot of different – they changed their launch points from their blitz package, did a really good job. The running game kind of took over in the second quarter. It just you just don't see enough out of the passing game. And this is maybe the lesson is that, well, how could the Washington program and their best – if you have subpar quarterback play and you're basically tied with one hand behind your back, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems. Now, Washington's problems at quarterback are much more egregious than what we refer to at Oregon, no doubt. I thought Washington ran the ball well. I thought Sean McGrew ran well. I thought Kamari Pleasant ran well. It was good to see Bynum get going pretty early at tight end. They just, at the start of the game, I thought the offensive line struggled. But I thought they, for the most part, settled in, played fairly well, particularly in the run game. Look, the defense for Oregon State rushed for 242 yards. And, I really thought that the defensive line, considering the fact that this is a case of just staying committed to the run and emphasizing the run, the defensive line, I wouldn't say they struggled. They just had a tough day. They were really up against it. I thought the linebackers, I thought their defensive line play was average. They weren't dominated is what I'm trying to say. Nothing on the defense really stood out. I don't think it was a badly called game. I think it's a problem with the quarterback position. It's a tough loss. It's one that, if you're Washington, shouldn't happen if you're playing Oregon State. But it can if you don't play well and you can't defend the run and somebody's going to run it for 250 right up on you and you can't score points. Therein lies the problem. A&M, you can't lose to Mississippi State. You can if you can't score points. A lot of things can happen. Now, as I alluded to, I thought the story of the week was Oregon's loss to Stanford. The performance of the week was by Arizona State. They were the most impressive, and they routed UCLA. I thought UCLA hung in, came back, kept it close for a while, but it was never in doubt because every time UCLA answered, Arizona State had another answer. It was big play after big play after big play after big play. It was interesting there. Good performance by ASU's offensive line. I didn't think their backs played well. I thought the defense situationally did a really good job. They put a lot of pressure on DTR, sacked him 4 times, 7 tackles for loss. They really got after it. I thought DTR had a tough game. And they did a good job against the running game. Remember Jacques Charbonnet and the success he's had at sometimes this year being really, really good, most notably against LSU, not the type of success against Arizona State. Thought the receivers and the tight ends graded out very well. Dulcich probably had his best game of the year. He wasn't able to cover it all. The offensive line really struggled in this game. I thought Arizona State really took it to him there. So it was a tough game for Chip. It was a tough game. The defensive line did not play well. The linebacker struggled. The secondary, oh my goodness, they were torched left and right. Now they did have the injuries to Quentin Lake and Kenny Churchwell, but Elijah Guidry got burned badly. It was really tough. They've had a tough game, and really, really nice job by Arizona State taking it to them. The game balls of the week, I do think Jaden Daniels of Arizona State, I marked him down. I marked Avery Roberts, the inside backer from Oregon State. He had 16 tackles. He was all over the place. Thought Parker Lewis, the place kicker of USC, was really good. Um, I thought the highest offensive line grade within the league this week was Ladarius Henderson. I thought he was really good. Um, Brennan Jackson in Washington State did a good job, and I thought, look, Tanner McGee, the freshman, was most impressive for Stanford. So those are some of my thoughts um, from this week's games inside the Pac-12. Let's take a look at what's else in the chat room here. What coaches do you expect to lose your job? The job. Oh boy. Gonna take a look at. I think in the SEC, we're looking at Ed Orgeron, and because of the changes that we've had in recent years, that would be the only one. In the ACC, I do think that Miami we need to have a look out for. I think Syracuse is another one. Let's keep an eye out on Virginia Tech. In the Big Ten, I don't see any new hire at Illinois. I don't see them doing anything with Scott Frost at Nebraska this year, but that's the one. He and Jeff Brom at Purdue, the ones on the shakiest ground, but I don't see it at this point. I may revisit that. Big 12. I don't really see it. I think depending on how they finish, we need to keep an eye on Matt Wells at Texas Tech, but I'm not seeing that yet. In the Pac-12, obviously we've got USC, and that's it. And that doesn't include the ones that may come open if a coach leaves, and there's some of that could take place. So that's my thoughts there. Any word on expanding the college playoffs? Still question. No, it's going to happen down the road, but it's going to take a while. Be a great year for expanded play. Well, would it? I mean, a lot of teams, but quite frankly, you can make the case this would be a great year for just two teams in it. I guess you look at it different. One thing I recently learned about Miami is that they stopped winning national championships after the first time they fired a coach. They fired Coker and haven't been successful since. Well, they haven't. First of all, Coker didn't build that program. He was on the staff with Butch Davis. They haven't been successful since, not because they fired Larry Coker. They just hired poorly after that. Larry Coker had done quite frankly, an awful job. Now, here's the thing, which you may not remember, Spartan Martin, is how good the team that was left for Larry Coker, and he basically, he underachieved with a roster. Imagine having an Alabama today type roster, or what LSU was in 2019, and they spit the bit because they were poorly coached. That was Larry Coker, God bless him. So the issues there, it has really nothing to do with that. It is the fact to do with that they haven't really put back then they didn't put the emphasis in the program and the infrastructure, and they have not hired as well. And that's what happens when you have a bad hire. But keeping Larry Coker would not have made sense, nor would it have slowed down what's happened to this point. Do you think Notre Dame still has a shot of making the playoffs? Rich Coach asks. I do not. I do not. I mean, they were, Cincinnati handled them pretty well, and look, they would have to jump over Cincinnati. I do not see it. Um, do you know why the 2020 Oregon started with Tyler? Yeah, because Anthony Brown transferred in. You know, it's the same reason why any quarterback transfer don't not going to get the job. They 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 recruited a really hotshot young quarterback who they obviously don't think is ready to play yet. So he didn't have a future at Oregon, so he moves on. That's what happens now. Um, what's wrong with Boise State? Well, got a new coach, Rock, um, and they're not quite as talented as they have been. Andy Avalos is a good coach, but it's not quite the same. It's a bit of a transition, and we'll see if Andy can do as good a job as the guys have done there in the past. It's not a given that everybody's going to do it quite as good. They're not as good of a team. They're not quite as talented. They're not as far along in terms of development. I do think developmental programs have a harder time when you have a year like they did last year where you lose your chance to develop as much. I mean, I think that has a carryover effect. I'm seeing it an awful lot with a lot of teams that just they're not as good this year because they weren't quite as developed last year. But that's the difference. Obviously, new coach here. Um, where do you see Chip and UCLA at this point? I think Chip's done a really good job. I think he's disappointed that they've not been able to finish a couple of these issues there. Look, Fresno State's really good. Arizona State's really good. Arizona State has more talent than he does. Fresno State does not. But boy, that Fresno State quarterback balled out big time. I think the key is, that is a place where they want to win, but they don't emphasize it as much. And, there's no panic there. They want to be competitive. They want to be better. I mean, I think they move on. Chip doesn't have options that excite him any more than what he has right now. And I don't think they're looking at UCLA as I don't think they're looking at Chip as boy, he's not getting it done. I think getting it done there is a little bit different. But let's just see um, if things develop going forward and spiral down. That could be an issue. Tedford is the best that Cal had. What will it take, or is the administration? Well, Jeff Tedford did a good job. He did a good job at Fresno State. But the biggest problem is Cal was so behind in facilities. I got to tell you, Justin's done a great job at Cal. I mean, the job that he did the past couple of years, that's some of the best defenses I've seen in terms of scheming people up with limited talent. I think it's one of the best jobs I've seen. It's again, I think part of it is there's not as good of a team. They didn't have as many guys that returned in the COVID environment, or what we call super seniors. And that's a big part of it. That's the reason why Michigan State is so good this year. They got a lot of super seniors and transfers. The transfer running back is the reason why they're winning, not because of, what they're doing here or there. People will throw a lot of this. I mean, yeah, Jeff Tedford had Cal in the top 5. They had good quarterbacks. They haven't been the same. They also were in a conference where people were always behind and spending money on facilities. That's what really led to Jeff getting frustrated in the problems there. So, yeah, you just don't have a lot of commitment there. And frankly, I think Justin's done a very good job there. Pac-12, Wilcox hasn't developed any offense in multiple seasons. I'm well aware of that, Rock. Thanks. If USC gets the right hire, I think the Pac-12 could become a powerhouse again. Yep, that's absolutely true. Yeah, Justin Wilcox hasn't put a good offense together. Not very easy to do there. May not be aware of the circumstances at Cal. It's a little bit different. You don't get a lot of players. He's a defensive coach. If you watch them and study them, they've played good defense. They've had good running games. They've not been able to recruit good quarterbacks. That's not a dynamic job. He kind of transformed the program. Sonny Dykes didn't win there either with the explosive offense that couldn't stop anybody. So I'm well aware of what's going on there. But Thanks for joining in. All right. Appreciate you joining us. Appreciate all your questions, everybody joining us in. I'm going to jump on a little bit of a break here, be on in about 5 minutes or so. Go Big 12 football and beyond for you. Join us when you get a chance. Thanks so much, everybody. Check out everything over at LandryFootball.com.